I'd like to call to order the Town of McCandless Council's regular business meeting for October the 22nd, 2018. The Pledge of Allegiance and invocation will be given by Councilman Wakakis.
Lord God, give me and my fellow members of Town Council and all who are at this meeting the wisdom to know your will and the courage, strength, and fortitude to do your will in all matters that come before Town Council. Let us recall Psalm 145, that the Lord God is near to all who call upon him, to all who call upon him in truth. Now I'd like to have a moment of silence in memory and appreciation for Brian Morth, a friend and colleague whose work as a member of the Planning Commission and Environmental Advisory Committee, who died late last month, was extremely valuable to this town. So if we could have a moment of silence. Okay, amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes from Council's regular business meeting of September?
I move to approve the minutes of Council's regular business meeting of September 24th, 2018, as submitted to each member of Council.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Are there any comments from anyone in Council? Hearing none, we'll vote on accepting of the minutes. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. A couple of announcements as we get started. Cleanup Day from the Environmental Advisory Committee had almost 70 people that showed up, and we collected over 110 bags of trash on roadsides. So hopefully when you were traveling here today, you noticed that things just looked a little bit cleaner. The other thing is we are going to be adding a electronic calendar to from Savvy Citizen. It's the same company that does the apps that you can sign up for that come to your phone to tell you what's going on in the community on our the town webpage. So it'll be an interactive calendar where our goal is to have a one-stop shop where you can really see everything that's going on in the town on the website, and then click on those for anything that you might be interested in. And tonight we're going to be using some overheads to help people with visualizing things, looking at the map. Sometimes they're so much smaller. We are going to try to incorporate that more. I think it's a good idea so people are all on the same page. It's hard to see, this little place here. So that's another way that we're trying to improve so that everybody knows what's going on. All right, number 5. Public hearing on the conditional use application filed by Sheets for a service station located at 8500 8510 8518 Perry Highway. This public hearing will be reviewed by Town Council at its Zoning Committee meeting on November 12th, 2018, and a vote will be scheduled for the first Town Council regular business meeting after the conditional use public hearing is closed. The service station will have a convenience store component.
Thank you, Madam President. So before we jump into the hearing and go on the record here, I wanted to, I think for the benefit of the audience here, kind of explain what exactly we're doing here tonight and maybe how it differs from past proceedings, particularly with respect to this property itself. So you probably, or many of you recall that the same property was the subject of a proposed text amendment by the applicant. And what the applicant had requested was that the criteria of prohibiting 2 gas stations within 1,500 feet of each other be deleted by Town Council, and that would essentially have allowed Sheets to move forward and with its current configuration and have the 2 gas stations at least for a portion of time at the property. What that was that text amendment was a discretionary act by Town Council, meaning that Town council was able to hear public comments from everybody and make a determination as to whether they thought that that was a good text amendment or a bad amendment to the zoning ordinance. This is a different situation. What this is a conditional use hearing. So this will be a public hearing, but essentially council will be sitting in a quasi-judicial capacity. In other words, council will be acting essentially as judges to determine whether or not the applicant has met the criteria in the ordinance to construct this service station on the subject properties. So if the applicant does meet those criteria, council is required to approve the application. Now, council can put reasonable conditions on that approval in order to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the residents in the area. But, it's an important distinction to make between the text amendment, which is discretionary and essentially up to council as to how they wanted to move forward. In this situation, which is more of, it's almost a trial setting, a little bit different, but essentially, council hears the evidence, the testimony, any documents that are presented, and reviews that in light of the ordinance and the provisions that the applicant has to meet, and then makes a determination. That determination, again, will be made not tonight. Essentially, this is just an information and evidence gathering hearing, but later on, council will review the evidence and testimony, and then ultimately issue written findings and a decision, either approving or denying the application. One other thing to point out, that this is the zoning approval aspect of the project. This is not the site plan or the land development approval. So this is essentially to determine whether or not this proposed use will be allowed and under what conditions at the subject property. If the applicant is approved, there will be a subsequent application for a site plan land development, which will get more into the details of the actual site plan itself. And that will also come before council for a vote, and the applicant would have to meet the subdivision ordinance requirements. So I think that's all I wanted to clarify, Madam President.
Okay, thank you. I would like to also say one more thing before I call this hearing to order, is that there are a lot of people here. This is important to a lot of people. I expect everyone to be respectful of everyone else and listen to everyone's opinion. We'll have you come up to the microphone and say your name, where you live, or your position if you're representing someone. There can be one person behind you waiting, so we'll never have more than 2 people up. So when that person's done speaking, just to expedite, so we know who's coming, then that person will come to the microphone. All right. All right, having said that, I'd like to call to order the public hearing for the conditional use application filed by Sheets.
Okay. Thank you, Madam President. Another distinguishing factor in the conditional use public hearing as opposed to the text amendment public hearing is that we will need to identify the individuals who would like party status in this case. In other words, those individuals with a direct and substantial and immediate impact that would occur potentially if this application is approved. So they may or may not be represented by council, but we want to right up front identify those folks who believe that they have standing, would be aggrieved parties in the event of an approval of this application, because those party objectors, and we're going to refer to them as objectors the rest of the way, will have opportunities beyond the 5-minute public comment limit to ask questions of the applicant and the applicant's witnesses and present their own testimony and evidence in support of their position. So again, before we get into the kind of the meat of the hearing, for lack of a better term, if I could have any party objectors identify themselves, and if they have counsel, if that counsel would identify themselves, please.
Good evening, Dwight Ferguson. I'm with the law firm of Caffarty Ferguson, and I'm here on behalf of the following persons, and I will give their name and their addresses, if that's okay. Michael and Suzanne Gronsky. They are located at 136 Montclair Avenue. Jason Moots, M-O-O-T-S. He's located at 160 Montclair Avenue. Everybody I represent lives on Montclair Avenue, so if you want to save yourself the trouble of writing it again. Jared Dahlgren, D-A-H-L-G-R-E-N, 160 Montclair. It's the same address. Craig Dover Spike, just as it sounds, 170 Montclair. Maurice and Heather Brown, 205 Montclair. Linda Hamilton, 212 Montclair. Jack and Nancy Rupp, 231 Montclair. And Mark and Lindy Hamilton, 224 Montclair. I'll provide my business card to Ms. Cavalier.
Thank you. One other thing I'd point out, and this goes for all public hearings, but in particular where we have a lot of people who have a lot to say, we want to make sure that we don't talk over each other, because the court reporter is taking down every word that's said. So we want to make her job as easy as possible. So as the council president said, if we could maintain a level of respect, let someone else finish their question or their comment before you comment, and only comments should be made from the microphone up front, no comments from the back. With that said, the remainder of the procedures are listed on the agenda. For those who maybe, I'm not sure if we had enough agendas to go around or not, but essentially the applicant will be given an opportunity to present their case in full. The objector, and let me ask, I guess one more time, are there any other objectors seeking party status who would like to enter their appearance at the microphone?
My name is Claire Crawford. I live at 130 Montclair.
Good evening, Frank Zandier, 8707 Casa Grande Drive.
If I could ask, please, the last two folks, did you sign the sign-in sheet clearly so we could see your name on a sign-in sheet for the record? Thank you.
Good evening, Ryan Wotus. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. I just have a quick question with respect to the last gentleman. I'm not sure exactly what the distance of 8707 Casa Grande Drive is from the subject property. So if I could either ask that question or
Yeah, Mr.
Rob, if you'd
I'm sorry,
like
is
to
it
do so.
Zandier?
About 9
I'm sorry, sir.
Depends on how good of a golfer you are.
Microphone, please, sir.
Yes, be at the
You have to
microphone.
get up, you guys come up to the microphone.
200 yards.
Any objection as to standing for Mr. Zandier?
I'm not sure if it abuts, so the question also would be how far. I mean, 200 yards, I would assume, probably is good enough for standing for the purpose of this hearing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry, now, are there any other objectors that who are not, whose appearance has not been entered either by themselves or on behalf of, by Mr. Ferguson? Okay, again, jumping to the procedure, just a general outline. The applicant will have an opportunity to present their full case, present all the evidence they want to present. After that, the objectors, and we'll start with Mr. Ferguson since he's an attorney, will have an opportunity to cross-examine the witnesses of the applicant. The applicant can then redirect, examine if necessary. After that part of the case is closed, then the objectors will have an opportunity to present any testimony or evidence that they have in opposition to the application. The applicant will have an opportunity to cross-examine those witnesses. After that's complete, there will be public comment. That will be the 5-minute limitation public comment that you normally see at a town council meeting, and that will be the standard, just wait your turn, go up, say your name and address and your comment, and then we'll move on. The final item will be at the option of both the objectors and the applicant to make a closing statement to council. And at that point, we'll close the public hearing, and it will be, again, discussed at a later meeting. So I think with that said, Madam President, I think we can turn it over to the applicant. Or, I'm sorry, we're
no.
going to turn it over to the land use administrator first.
Thank you. Before you do that, may I? So, do you usually introduce the advertising and notices through the land use administrator?
Yes.
Okay. And then perhaps after Mr. Betty has concluded, I think there are two preliminary matters that council should address before the applicant makes its presentation, but I think Mr. Betty should probably introduce the case first because it will put notices into the record. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Betty, you heard the comment about the public notice. Did you post the necessary public notices and placed the necessary legal advertisements?
The notice was posted within the town as required. It was posted on the bulletin boards in the town, and I'd like to introduce Town Exhibit Number 1 as a proof of publication in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, October 5th and October 12th. This is a Town Exhibit Number 1. Town Exhibit Number 2 is 4 pictures of the posting of the property, and those are along Perry Highway and along Montclair Avenue. So this is Town Exhibit Number 2 collectively.
Mr. Ferguson, before Mr. Betty continues, did you have questions about those particular notices?
If I saw those, I could answer it, but I'll just ask you, Mr. Betty.
Yes, sir.
The posting along Montclair, was it adjacent to 131 Montclair or only the properties with Perry Highway addresses?
Only the properties with Perry Highway addresses.
Thank you. That's all.
All right, Mr. Betty?
Okay. Madam President, we're going to start the projectors. Might take a little bit to warm up, so rather than have a delay.
Thank you.
This was through the Town Planning Commission at the beginning of the year. The Planning Commission reviewed it, and staff and administration also reviewed the application. And I'd like to make a few comments as to what some of the suggestions we have. And there's one that has one additional comment that wasn't made previously. So start with lighting. What we're looking at, or what we're suggesting, is that there not be any external sign lighting, and that the canopy itself is opaque so that there is not a red glare coming from the canopy, and that the lights within the canopy be recessed rather than extended down. We're also suggesting a phrase be added as part of a recommendation for exterior lighting, and Councilman Wachowskis talked about Brian Moorth. This is the Brian Moorth comment that was often made at our McCandless Crossing. Anytime we had a hearing for McCandless Crossing, this became part of it. And it says exterior lighting and sign lighting must be constructed and operated in a manner that will not cause disruptive color alteration or illumination of neighboring residential properties. The owner, operator of all lighting and signs must address any complaints of neighboring residents that involve casting, color alteration on the residential property, or illumination that can cause shadows on or within the residence. If the disruptive exterior lighting or sign lighting is not eliminated, the illumination must cease. General item number 2, impact on the neighborhood. We are suggesting that a large mound be constructed along Montclair, and that a heavier than normal buffer be planted along Montclair. And rather than our normal buffer, we are asking that there be some sort of columnar evergreen be planted in addition to some of the normal shrubs and canopy and understory trees. Also, adjacent to residential property, we're asking that the light poles be lowered from the normal height of 18 to 24 feet. We haven't specified an exact height for those as of yet. We're also asking that garbage pickup be regulated so that it is taking place during regular hours, that there not be any garbage pickup taking place before 8 a.m. nor later than 8 p.m. We're also asking that fuel and products be regulated within the same hours or some reasonable hours in addition to that. Also asking that the operation, any exterior dining be regulated so that it is taking during certain hours. Again, we haven't recommended which hours those would be, but we wanted to regulate, we're suggesting regulation of outdoor dining. And finally, and this is the one that we hadn't talked about before, it did come up during our text change amendment, that the fuel tanks, try to locate the fuel tanks so that they are not more than 300, or not less than 300 feet from any residential property line. And the reason for that was, as we found out, that certain loans cannot be guaranteed through insurance if that is the case, if they are closer than 300 feet. And those are the recommendations from the Planning Commission and administration. Oh, did it? No, it's still yellow. Okay. I'm sorry.
Mr. Betty, have you finished? Is it?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so next will be the applicant's presentation.
If I may, I'd like to just raise two issues before that.
Okay. All right, come to the microphone, please.
Thank you. Just while you're working on that.
Madam Court Reporter, does he need to re-identify himself every time he comes in?
Thank you for asking.
All right, so I don't mean to speak out of order, but I think that there are issues that go to the propriety of this proceeding. So as Mr. Betty testified, there was not a posting of this property either at 131 Montclair or which informed people that 131 Montclair was integral to the application. The public notices that went out, I'm looking at the copy received by the Gronskys dated October 9th, 2018. It identifies the subject properties as being 8500, 8510, and 8518 Perry Highway in the RC Residential Commercial Zoning District. It does not inform anyone that 131 Montclair is proposing to have a building on it, and that to meet the requirements of the conditional use application, they are relying upon improvements occurring on 131 Montclair. If someone had taken this notice, which we did, and come to the municipal building here and read the application, they would have read this. This is the addendum to the zoning application, which says, first of all, it defines those three properties, not including 131 Montclair, but it defines just those three Perry Highway properties as the subject properties. And the third paragraph of the addendum to the zoning application says, the principal use of the property is service station, including self-service of gasoline, and as a permitted conditional use within the RC zoning district. Then it says this application requests only a conditional use approval for the operation of a service station on the subject properties, which are directly adjacent to Perry Highway. And if you've had an opportunity, or you will, to see these plans, it is not limited to those 3 properties on Perry Highway, but rather this development includes 131 Montclair, which is probably 99% of the reason why my clients and others are here. But there's no notice. In fact, to the contrary, the application says it does not involve anything other than the Perry Highway properties. So for that reason, I think that the notice is misleading. And then if we come tonight and watch the applicant show that, well, they say they need 38 spaces. Only 12 of those are on the Perry Highway properties. The other are on 131 Montclair. The building is partially on, they call it the store on the plan. That's partially on the Perry Highway properties, but mostly on 131 Montclair. The buffering that they're showing is all on 131 Montclair. Most of it's all on 131 Montclair. So for that reason, I think that the notice is deceiving, and I think that, and now Mr. Betty did exactly, his notice is exactly correct because he read the application just as we did, and it explicitly says that it's only involving the Perry Avenue property. So Mr. Betty's not to blame because that's what the application said. But once we get here, we find out it's all about 131 Montclair. The second thing that I asked the council to consider in advance is that this afternoon, Mr. Gronsky filed a substantive validity challenge to the zoning of 131 Montclair. 131 Montclair is literally a single parcel that zones C3, and it is surrounded by RC and residential zoning. It's a leftover. All of the RC used to be C3, or most of it, and then when they rezoned the RC, there's a couple little C3 appendages that just got left, but it is literally an island in the middle of a residential zoning district, and the C3 district is actually more intense than the RC district. So a gas station in C3 is permitted by right. We wouldn't even have to have a hearing, but since the canopy is in the RC, we're here for a conditional use application. So we filed a substantive validity challenge, and that has to be heard by the zoning hearing board, and pursuant to the municipality's planning code, when there's a substantive validity challenge that affects a parcel of property about which council could take official action under state law, that stays these proceedings until the zoning hearing board decides if that is properly zoned or if it's invalidly zoned. So those are the preliminary matters that I was asking the council to consider. I have a summary of my entire position here, including those arguments with regard to the stay of proceedings in light of a substantive validity challenge. I will tell you, here's what it says. It's section 915.1 of the municipality's planning code. Upon filing of any proceeding referred to in another section of the MPC, and during its pendency before the board, meaning the zoning hearing board, all land development pursuant to any challenged ordinance, order, or approval of the zoning officer or of any agency or body, and all official action thereunder shall be stayed. So there's 2 reasons not to proceed tonight.
Mr. Ferguson, you recited, I think, the answer, at least in my opinion, as to the stay. I mean, it specifically says land development, does it not?
It says all official action.
No, it's not disjunctive like that. So you have to read the entire sentence again, just to be clear for the record.
Okay. It says, so there's 2 parts of it. One stays the action of the applicant. That would be that person's land development. So there's a challenge, they can't keep building. And the other part stays the action of the municipality from taking official action.
On the land
so I will read it for you if you'd like.
Okay.
It says, upon filing of any proceeding referred to in section 913.3 and during its pendency before the board, all land development pursuant to any challenged ordinance, order, or approval of the zoning officer or of any agency or body, and all official action thereunder shall be stayed.
So thereunder, meaning thereunder the land development.
Thereunder meaning the challenge. And we have a case here in which, I'll quote the court. This is actually, there aren't any appellate decisions, but this is a Mercer County court interpreting appellate law. The MPC is clear that if a substantive appeal is taken to the zoning hearing board during its pendency before the board, all land development under the challenged ordinance is stayed. It is assumed that if such an appeal is taken from any future township zoning amendment, no action will be taken by the township on requests for preliminary approval of land development under the challenged amendment during its pendency before the zoning hearing board.
So that also sounds like it relates to land development and not conditional use. Do you have any case law that would?
That's the only case that interprets this entire section. But I think that this is official action approving.
Well, I mean, there's not going to be a vote, right, tonight.
Yes.
So
I
there's
mean,
no official action. We're having a public hearing. Why don't we let Mr. Wotus respond since we've given
sure.
you an opportunity?
Okay, sure.
Good evening, Ryan Wotus again here on behalf of the applicant. Sheets, I think there's a very easy way to put this all to bed. We're dealing with 3 pieces of property that are identified as being located on Perry Highway. They're all located in the RC zoning district. The only application that's pending tonight before council is for a public hearing related to the RC district and those properties only. So all we're dealing with is potentially the use. Again, we're not talking about land development, we're not talking about design, we're not talking about anything that would be subject to that type of approval. All we're looking at is specifically the use in the RC district. This is not a rarity when this type of question comes up, when you have a split zone lot, and because only the RC piece is subject to conditional use, that's the only application that's currently pending before you. It would actually be improper to identify 131 Montclair as being part of this application because it's not located in the RC district. It's located in the C3. So as a result of that, the advertisement appropriately identified the parcels that are subject to this application. And furthermore, again, it wouldn't make sense to try to go ahead and address 131 Montclair at this time. That would be subject to the land development approval. Mr. Ferguson also identified that the store and parking stalls would be located on the C3 parcel. Again, although there may be depictions shown of that, we can go ahead and meet the criteria for the conditional use in the RC district and identify one of the items, which is parking. We have sufficient parking under the RC district in the RC district, and we can comply with that provision of the ordinance. So from a notice standpoint, I think it's abundantly clear that that was appropriately provided in this instance, and the application appropriately identified that as well. With respect to the second piece, the substantive validity challenge, that appears to also relate to the C3 parcel. That's not before council tonight. That's also not part of this application. We're again dealing solely with the RC district. So even if that were filed, my position is obviously this piece can move forward. The conditional use application can move forward. And ultimately, this is not land development. To Mr. Robb's point, is we're not dealing with land development approvals tonight. We're dealing solely with the conditional use for the RC district, which was appropriately identified in the notice.
Well, let me propose a solution then. So since this has nothing to do with 131 Montclair, I presume that Sheets will stipulate tonight that I'll just raise a standing objection, which they'll agree should be sustained, to any depictions of 131 Montclair, any reference to any criteria for the approval of the conditional use that relies upon or relates to 131 Montclair. So anything they bring up, anything they depict pertaining to 131 Montclair will not be part of this hearing. It'll be part of a standing objection to which they'll stipulate.
What I can tell you is there will be pictures and depictions of the site. Why? However, because that's part of the overall site, we can't go ahead and modify that at this point. But what I can tell you right now is we will meet the criteria for the conditional use regardless of what's shown in the C3 or in reliance on what's in the C3. We can establish that we're permitted and entitled to this approval as a conditional use, relying on solely the 3 parcels that are in the RC district.
So I would recommend to council, obviously you're the final decision makers here, that you could proceed with the hearing. You could certainly take note of Mr. Ferguson's objections and legal arguments and take them into consideration. But I think you can proceed with the hearing based on the procedures that were followed.
Do we need to adjourn to decide that
Yeah.
together? Privately?
I mean, if you
or what do we need to do?
if you want to seek legal advice on that issue, we can adjourn temporarily to executive session.
Council, how do you feel? What do you think?
I don't care, I
We
don't see
can-
why. But if
Our
you want,
choices are acknowledge the objection and continue on, or
We can move into executive session to
move
discuss
into-
it further,
to
or you could terminate the hearing and require, do new notice and a revised application, but that's not my recommendation.
Counsel, in executive session, will your opinion change?
It will not.
I move that we proceed in the interest of everyone's time.
I agree.
do we need to have a vote on that?
No.
Or just a head nod?
I agree as well.
I'll agree.
I mean, if no one's moving to go into executive session, we're just continuing the hearing on.
Okay, yes? Or yes? All right, then the proceedings will continue.
Okay. Thank you very much. As indicated by both Mr. Betty and by Mr. Robb, again, we're here on solely a conditional use application related to solely the use of 3 parcels located on Perry Highway. This is all located in the RC zoning district, that is the residential commercial zoning district under the McCandless zoning ordinance. What is being proposed is a service station in the RC district. Under the RC district, that is a conditional use. Generally speaking, from an overall standard, a conditional use is a use that's permitted as of right so long as the specific objective criteria has been established by the applicant. As you'll hear this evening, as we move through a few of our witnesses, we will be able to establish the criteria associated with this use in the RC district. Also, as discussed briefly, there is a separate land development application and process that will subsequently be followed. Currently, that is pending. However, at the township's request, we have gone ahead and tabled that from moving forward until we can move through the conditional use process and ultimately have a decision rendered. So anything related to generally design or other items that otherwise would be approved by council as you traditionally approve through a land development process is not yet before you, and ultimately will be following these proceedings. So with that brief introduction, I'd like to go ahead and introduce my first witness, David Mastrostefano. Do you want to steal that? I can talk loud.
Please, yes, sorry. Actually, why don't you just do a mass swearing in? Yeah, anyone who is going to testify, you can go ahead and we'll swear all the witnesses in.
Anybody speaking tonight?
Even if you might even if there's a possibility you're going to testify, I think it probably saves everybody some time if you could just stand up and raise your right hand. Sometimes you think of something after the fact.
Yeah, I noticed.
Do you all swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Thank you.
Okay, David, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself for the record. I'm sorry. Jumping ahead of you there a little bit. David, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself for the record, please.
Yes, David Mastrostefano,
Can you spell the last name?
Mastrostefano.
And David, who are you currently employed by?
Sheets Incorporated.
And what's your specific position at Sheets?
I am the in-house engineering permit manager in the store development department. In-house engineering permit manager in the store development department.
Can you generally explain what your job responsibilities entail?
Yeah, my basic responsibilities are to hire the necessary engineering consultants after a piece of property is gone under contract by our real estate department. I hire the necessary consultants to go through the land use approval process with the goal of seeking all municipal, township, and state approvals. And then once all approvals are obtained, then to acquire building permits and then turn over the project to our construction department, who then bid the project out for construction.
And in consultation with your outside consultants, you also review site plans prior to submission and oversee them through the process of approval.
Yes, I oversee the whole process of the design of the project.
And do you currently hold any professional licenses?
Yes, I hold 3 licenses. I hold a professional engineering license in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, and in Tennessee.
And for the purpose of this hearing, how long have you held? Yeah, no problem. Take your time. You ready? purpose of this hearing, how long have you held your license in Pennsylvania?
I've held my license in Pennsylvania for close to 16 years. I hold my Tennessee license as long as 24 years,
And how long have you worked for Sheets?
approximately 14 years.
Has that all been in the same position?
In the same position prior to working for Sheets, I was also an engineering consultant for Sheets, designing their land development projects for 6 years.
Okay, for the purpose of tonight's so for the purpose of tonight's hearing, are you familiar with the conditional use application that has been submitted to you now?
I am.
And have you had a chance to review that application?
I did, yes.
And you're aware that the only item that's pending this evening is the conditional use application?
That's correct in the RC district.
And that application again solely seeks the approval of a service station within the RC district?
That is correct.
Are you familiar generally with the properties that are subject to tonight's application?
I am.
And can you just generally identify where they're located?
They're located at the intersection of 19 and, let's see here, in Montclair Avenue, as depicted by this existing condition plan. So it's these three parcels here, 19, left to right across the bottom, Montclair, up and down on the right side.
And can you go, not to make you jump back, would you mind going back and we can identify, actually on this site, I'm sorry, this site of plan actually shows it as well. Can you identify the zoning districts in which those parcels are located?
Yes. These three parcels here are in the RC district as noted by these symbols here. This dashed line here represents the dividing line between the RC and the rear C3. Across Montclair, you can see where the RC is forward of this dashed line and the R2 is to the backside of that dashed line.
And the property to the north of three parcels you identified?
Property to the north here is RC also. Property to the south, the property to the north is the heating and cooling company, and to the south is also RC, and that's an Amoco transmission.
And since the discussion was raised, the parcel that's located in the C3 is not subject to tonight's approval?
That is correct.
Does this also show what the zoning is across the street?
Across
Perry Highway?
Yes, it's labeled, identified as RC, all along 19 on the west side.
So the three parcels that are subject to tonight's application either about the RC district or the C3 district, is that right?
That's correct.
And the three parcels that are depicted on here that are part of the subject property, do you know how those are currently utilized?
They are utilized for commercial purposes. I believe these two, I think it says 8500 and 8510 are vacant, and I think 8518 is still operating.
And can you identify the existing access to those three parcels?
Yes, to parcel 8500, which has frontage on 19 and also side frontage on Montclair. They have a commercial driveway right here opposite the Amoco transmission driveway right here, both in the RC district. 8510 has an entrance off of 119, and then 8515 has an entrance at the signalized intersection off of 19.
If we would want to move on to our proposed site plan to identify what's being proposed in this RC district, would that be helpful?
Yes, I will also note that 8500 and 8510 are interconnected, so you can go from the entrance off of Montclair all the way over to the entrance on 19 and vice versa.
Okay, David, can you identify what this exhibit is?
This is a colored representation of the site plan illustrating the convenience store, the fueling island canopy, and also areas of greenscape, landscaping as indicative of the color green, along with symbols and dark green features representing various size or various types of trees and shrubs. both along Montclair and Perry Highway and to the north of the fuel island canopy.
And so all of the fueling operations, being the fueling island and the actual dispensers, are all located in the RC district, is that right?
Yes, from the existing condition plan, these are the same dividing lines, zoning lines, carried over to this proposed plan. As you can see, to the west of this dash line is RC. To the west of this dash line on the opposite side of Montclair is RC. To the east, on the other side of Montclair, is the R district. To the east is the C district. And to the north, that's still RC. And to the south, across Montclair, to the front is also RC.
And the underground storage tanks would also be located in the RC district, is that right?
That's correct. The underground storage tanks, which is this gray rectangular box here, fronting on Perry Highway, is where the underground storage tanks are. And the fuel island canopy, represented by this feature here, illustrating 5 multi-pump dispensers, is all within the RC district.
And can you identify what's the square footage of the property that's actually located in the RC district?
The RC district is approximately 0.85 acres, or a little over 37,000 square feet.
And so do you also have another black and white site plan, or is this
Yes.
just,
Nope, I have a black and white site plan.
Now, as part of your responsibility in overseeing this project from development through approvals, have you gone ahead and also reviewed the ordinance with respect to bulk regulations for the RC district?
I have.
And based upon this site plan as provided, are the pump islands and fueling operations located in the buildable area of the site?
Yes, they're in the buildable area of the RC district site. Centrally located, as shown by the fuel island canopy, semi-centrally located between the RC C3 district line and Route 19, and the underground storage tanks forward of the fuel island canopy, also in the RC district, between the C3 dividing line and the RC line out front on 19. So it's all wholly within the RC district.
And does this site plan also depict the setbacks that are applicable under the zoning ordinance?
It does.
Can you identify, it's a little tough to see on there, but can you identify at least where the setback line runs?
There's a 35-foot setback line that runs along Route 19. How clear this is going to be. There is a 20-foot setback line that runs parallel to Montclair within the RC district, but once it hits the R2 district, it goes to a 100-foot setback, and that 100-foot setback is just before the edge of the sidewalk here at spaces 14 through 9. As you go to the rear, now we're talking about the...
Yeah, I don't know why we're talking about setbacks on this parcel, which apparently is not supposed to have anything to do with their application.
Staying with the RC district on the north side, we have a 20-foot setback on the north side. So it's 20 foot on the north, 35 on the west, and 20 on the south.
And all the proposed improvements that are shown on this site plan fall inside in the interior of those setbacks?
They do.
With respect to buffer yards, it may be easiest since we've zoomed in here. Can you identify the buffer yards that are shown on this plan as well?
On the north side of the RC district is a 10-foot buffer zone. There's no buffer zone out along Route 19. There's a 35-foot setback, and there's a buffer zone C on the south side within the RC district.
And with respect to you identified there's no front buffer. That's actually under the ordinance. There's no requirement for a front buffer yard.
That is correct.
Can you also go ahead and identify the number of parking stalls that are located on the RC district side?
Yes, using this dark dash line, which represents the dividing line between RC and C3, we have spaces 16 through 25, which are wholly within the RC, You have space 35 on the line and space 15 on the line. So you have 12 parking spaces within the RC district.
And from an operational standpoint, what would be the peak number of employees that would be?
At any given time, we'll have 6 to 8 employees.
Unless you have anything else, you want to move on to looking at elevations of the site and talk about signage at the pumps.
Okay.
So if you could identify for the record what we're looking at.
Yeah, this is a graphical representation done by the in-house designers and architects within this corporation of sheets, which give two-dimensional pictorial view of the fuel island canopy. At the top is the awning that would be surrounding the top structure of the canopy, which is over top of the fuel pumps. In the lower right-hand corner, this is a view as if you were sitting at the end of the pumps looking down the spine of the pumps, which represents the fuel pump itself in relationship to the two supporting columns on either side. That one picture represents one fuel pump island setup. There's 5 duplicate ones of these that make up the 5 pump dispensers, as you can see on this lower left-hand corner depiction. So this picture on the right is if you're sitting out here on the left side looking down the spine of this canopy. This particular picture on the right represents the signage for the diesel. We have diesel pumps only at the 2 exterior pumps, the 2 end pumps of this 5-pump island setup. Each pump island has 2 supporting columns, one in the front, one in the rear. The front column will have this sign centrally located on this drawing, which identifies it as auto diesel with the price, and that is, for all intents and purposes, 2 panels. On the back column is this sign here in the middle bottom. That panel is double-sided, says auto diesel on the front side and the back side, so that's a total of 4 panels per pump island.
Can you identify what the square footage of that signage would be, identifying the prices?
Yes, the total square footage of these 4 panel, these panel signs is 20.8 square feet, which is less than the allowable 24 square feet by the ordinance.
Do you also have any elevations that you can show of the canopy and fueling operations in the RC district?
This is the elevation of the RC district. So here's a representation of the store, the dividing line, or the RC3 line. The RC line would be coming through here, so everything forward of that would be the fuel island canopy, and I've already testified on the other drawings that the fuel island canopy and the underground storage tanks are wholly within the setbacks in the RC district.
Can you move on to a landscape plan? Again, can you identify for the record what we're looking at here?
Yeah, let me zoom in a little bit. What we're looking at here is a graphical representation prepared by the consulting firm, the civil consulting firm's landscape architect, depicting proposed landscaping for this project, staying with everything within the RC district, which again carried over from the previous drawings. This dashed line representing the district line between RC and C3. We have landscaping shown on the north, the west, and the south side of all of the RC district.
So we had an opportunity to talk briefly about buffer yard C. Are there certain planting requirements that are identified under the ordinance with respect to that buffer
Yes, there are requirements for the number of canopy trees, understory trees, and shrubs. We've done the calculation based on the linear footage, and we are providing what is required in the RC district, the necessary number of plants of each of those types on this plan. There's also additional landscaping out in front, which was not part of that calculation. So within the RC district as a whole, there's additional landscaping beyond the ordinance requirement.
And under this site plan as proposed, there's no variances that would be required under the zoning ordinance, is that right?
That's correct.
So let's talk just generally, the use here is obviously in the RC district, is for the primary purpose of dispensing motor fuel into vehicles, is that right?
That's correct.
And I believe we already identified that the pump island and the canopy are located in the buildable area.
That is correct.
Will there be any repairs done in the RC district for vehicle repairs?
There will be no repairs done.
There would also not be any body repairs done.
There will be no body repairs done.
And in fact, with the overall development, there will be no vehicle repairs.
That is correct.
We also identified the gross lot area of the portion of the RC district exceeds 30,000 square feet.
That is correct. It's about approximately 0.85 acres, which is a little over 37,000 square feet.
And you've also done a analysis of the nearest existing operating gasoline station, is that right?
Yes.
And we will have an operational witness to talk tonight about that specifically, but there's no operating gas station within 1,500 feet of this site, is that correct?
That is correct.
So we also identified there's 12 stalls in the RC district, is that correct?
That is correct.
And the number of peak employees would be anywhere between 6 to 8.
Correct.
So there's sufficient parking to compensate for the maximum intended employees on the site at any given hour.
That is correct.
And again, there won't be any vehicle, as there's no repair here, there will not be any vehicles left for repair service, is that correct?
That is correct.
In addition, the ordinance, one of the criteria under the conditional use speaks to a rear yard buffer, and it identifies that it shall be provided along residential property in accordance with section 1314.04 buffer yard H. This site, meaning the RC site, does not abut any residential property, is that correct?
That is correct. It abuts all commercial RC district property.
And we also had the opportunity to talk about buffer yard C, which is the side yard buffer, and identified that the calculation has been completed and the plantings have been provided in accordance with the requirements.
That's correct. The number of understory trees, canopy trees, and shrubs meet the ordinance.
The last element speaks to, provides that in addition to other signs permitted under this section, gas stations may erect changeable copy signs advertising the prices of fuels, provided that, and then there's 5 subsections. The first is that such signs are permitted permanently mounted either to the fuel pumps or to the supports of the canopy covering the fuel pumps. Now, in the elevations that you provided, these signs would be permanently mounted to either the fuel pumps or the supports, is that right?
Correct, and all our signs are to the support columns.
And those signs would not be mounted higher than 14 feet, is that correct?
That is correct. They are mounted at 14 feet.
Another requirement is that there shall be no more than 4 sign faces per pump island. Is this proposal in compliance with that?
Yes, this sign is 2 panels. This sign is back-to-back, 1 on each side, 2 panels, total of 4 panels per pump island.
And again, these would only be on the exterior pump islands.
Only on the exterior of the 5 multi-pump dispenser setup.
The next provision says the combined surface area of all such signs at each pump island does not exceed 24 square feet. Can you just re-identify the total square footage of this signage?
20.80 square feet.
So that would be in compliance with the ordinance as well.
That's correct.
And lastly, it provides that the sign shall not be internal or illuminated externally. Can you identify how, if at all, these signs are illuminated?
This panel here, the lower middle one, which is on the back side of the column, is not internally illuminated. It's just a panel. This panel and its pricer, which is on the front column, are both internally illuminated.
Talking about the double-sided, you said it was not internally illuminated. It's also not externally
It's not, that's correct.
So as a result of your knowledge regarding operations of sheets and the proposed development here today, would you agree that the proposed design would not generate any adverse impacts in public interest than would be greater anticipated for this use normally?
No, I agree with that. Yep.
Unless you have anything else you want to add? I don't think I have any further questions. That's all I got. Okay. I'd call our next witness, Jamie Leonard.
Yeah, first, I prefer, just let, if you could just let the applicant, just, we're trying to keep a semblance of order, I think that's the best way to do it.
You can't hear the video. Okay.
No problem.
Yeah, I forgot about that aspect. While we're waiting for this to initialize, Jamie, can you go ahead and identify yourself for the record?
Yeah, my name is Jamie Leonard from Cincinnati, and I own Red Leonard Associates.
And can you identify what is Red Leonard Associates?
We are a manufacturer's rep agency that has specialized in convenience store lighting since 1954.
And how long have you been in the business, actually, of operating Red Leonard?
I've owned it since 1987 and since 1982.
So you've been an employee there since 1992?
Yes.
And what specifically have you focused on as an employee of Red Leonard?
Well, we do all the design for projects like this. We do all the lighting design and supply the material, and I manage the whole company.
Okay, so you ultimately prepare the photometric plans, prepare the lighting schemes, number of lights, location, height. Is that an accurate description of
Yes.
ultimately what you do?
Yes.
Okay. And you've been involved in the prior development of other sheets stores, is that correct?
Yes, many.
Could you give a ballpark of how many you've been involved
Oh,
in?
my goodness. More than 500.
Okay, that's significant. You've also been involved or been hired by other gasoline operators, is that correct?
Yes.
And as part of that, you've done the same type of work, preparing photometrics and preparing lighting plans for them, is that right?
Yeah, we probably do close to 100 a week.
Okay. So I know that you have prepared a plan here that can go ahead and show the proposed lighting, and if you wouldn't mind just giving a brief introduction to council as to what will be shown on the projection.
Sure. This is a tool that we use to bring virtual reality to an avenue like this. We run it on a PC, but this is virtual reality in front of you without the headset. So we recreate the site based on the engineering documents and the community around. We use the engineering files for the lighting and import it into the software, and it will show the proper distribution, the amount of light, and obviously the architectural features to the facility itself. So,
Jamie, if you wouldn't mind, then if you could maybe take us out to Perry Highway or whatever is easiest for you so that we can see the portion of the improvements in lighting that would be in the RC district. Would council prefer the lighting to be dimmed to see it easier? Okay. So if you could just orient them, the street that's located to your rear, is that Montclair?
this side, yes, I believe so.
Correct. Okay. And so this would be looking north onto to the site from Montclair Avenue.
Yes.
And do you identify? So this would be the proposed lighting at what time does this set at?
Right now, we'll go to noon, and you can go down by the hour. So that would be 1, 2. Simply go down as the shadowing goes down.
And this is based upon the actual photometric plan that was prepared for this site.
Yes.
So we're at, this is now showing what it would look like at 7 p.m.?
Yes, 7. And it takes a minute to adjust as the process develops. That'll be 8 o'clock. 9. And then darkness.
Where's the outside heat, the seating? Where's that located?
Yeah, maybe I can, it'd be at that front corner on the building itself.
It's on 131 Montclair.
Yep. Yeah, to your question, that would be where the outdoor seating would be proposed, at that corner. Okay, Jamie, if you wouldn't mind turning us back toward the RC portion. And I'm not sure if you can walk us, okay, if you could stop there, I guess. In terms of the lighting that was proposed for this facility, can you talk about levels of lighting at the property lines?
Yeah, just to give you some examples, a beautiful day with no clouds is approximately 1,000-foot candles. An overcast day that sometimes you might see if people have animation light controllers on their lights. An overcast day is going to be about 100-foot candles. This canopy is designed about 39.5-foot candles. And at the property line to the street, which is McCandless, is to the left of us.
Montclair.
It's at 0.0-foot candles, which, to give you some sort of an idea, moonlight on a kind of a cloudy colored moon covered night will give you 0.01-foot candles, and a beautiful full moon will give you 0.03-foot candles, and we are at 0.0.
Now, in your experience of developing numerous, thousands of lighting plans for gasoline stations, is that a traditional lighting plan that it would be at 0 at property lines?
That's extremely strict, very strict.
And the property line would also include points of access, ingress and egress to the site, is that correct?
Yes.
So that would also be at 0-foot candles?
Yes, based on where we took those, yes.
Okay. Is there an ability to take us out to Perry Highway and look
Yes.
back toward the site? So this would be at the entrance, or the proposed entrance along Perry Highway, looking back onto the site, is that right?
Yes.
And similarly, along here, can you explain what the lighting, levels of lighting are that are proposed along Perry Highway?
And based on that entrance, you're probably looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 to 1.5-foot candles for safety, for people to pull in and out, so that they can see oncoming traffic.
And is that light?
That is well below the standard.
Well,
Normally, a standard is going to be somewhere in the 3 to 5-foot candle range.
and you also talked, well, you talked about the canopy, under the canopy lighting was approximately 32, I believe you said, foot candles?
39.
Can you just give council an idea of traditionally where those lighting levels are for a normal gas station operation?
It is a task-oriented area, so anytime you want a task-oriented area underneath a fueling canopy, you're probably looking at 50 to 55-foot candles.
So again, significantly less than what you traditionally would have included in a traditional gasoline station development.
Yes.
Can you just briefly explain then, as you move down Perry Highway, what the lighting levels would be as you move toward Montclair?
Well, I think it's pretty evident. The lighting control, I think we might get a little bit more out of an aerial view here. We can go above the site.
Amy, could you use the microphone?
Yeah, this is an aerial view as we look back on it. And it kind of gives you a very good cutoff of the lighting as it is proposed. We use back cutoff shields. It's basically kind of like an eyelid to your eye, that it controls the light from the pole forward. And it's technology that Cree encompasses, because they actually control each individual LED diode on the fixture itself. And you can just turn around the lot and kind of get a chance to see it from an aerial view.
And with respect to, you identified cutoff, those cutoffs will also be applied to the lighting that's outside the canopy, the other on-site lighting. Is that
Yes, absolutely. And you can see it right there that it stays on the property. You have much more control with this technology than you do traditional HID, which is what you see out there today.
And is there any other modifications that have been made to the on-site lighting to go ahead and reduce any off-site impacts?
Yes, to the top back section, we lowered those poles to 11 feet to reduce the height, just to ensure that there would be no lighting generated behind the residential area right there, behind the property line right to the top right.
Traditionally, how tall would those lights normally be?
A standard is 20 with a 3-foot base, so 23 feet is pretty much typical.
So they've been reduced approximately 9 feet in total?
Probably more, well, a little bit more than half. We're going down to 11, mounting height.
11, okay.
Mounting height, yes, sir.
What's the height of the trees?
I'll give you a chance to see that.
Are you talking about up on the RC portion, or?
Clear.
Let's see if you can. So the landscape plan that was previously shown had been updated. So this was this gives a better understanding of from a lighting perspective. But the buffering that is proposed for the Montclair side has been significantly upgraded. Was shown on the prior landscape plan. So this depicts some landscaping, but it doesn't show in total what will ultimately.
So what's the height of the trees, though? Just so I understand, like the highest when they're planted, not.
David, do you know that answer? So there's certain requirements in terms of understory trees, full-size trees, and whatnot. But David, if you could just reintroduce yourself again.
I can't give you an exact height. I mean, it depends at the time if this project goes through, what's at the nursery to meet your requirements for an understory tree, a canopy tree. Typically, a canopy tree would be like a maple. It'll eventually grow, upwards of 40, 50 feet high. The understory trees, I'm not a landscape guy, but, got to believe those will be, 15, maybe even 20, 25 feet high at maturity. But what they get planted at will be dictated at the time. Their requisition from the nursery and the species of trees that are ultimately approved upon in working with staff as well as the neighbors.
And David, just since we have you again, is the landscaping will comply in all respects with the zoning ordinance, is that right?
Yeah, as far as number in the species, canopy, understory, shrubs, the number of trees, we will meet the ordinance and we will exceed the ordinance.
Would we be able to put shrubbery in there that would get fuller from the ground up so it protects Montclair
Certainly.
instead of just the trees?
Certainly, we do have shrubs as part of our landscape plan. We have that mixture that's required by the ordinance. That C buffer has a mixture, tells you how many shrubs, how many understory, how many canopy. We went and we're not talking about that because that's the C3 district, but since you asked the question, in that particular area along Montclair, we've added more evergreens to help with year-round screening. And again, we'll work with staff on the species and types of shrubs you desire.
Thank you.
May I see it at night again, only from the houses that are on Montclair?
Sure.
I don't think we saw that angle. Right here, turned around and look.
That about right?
Probably,
You can go up the street as well.
yeah, maybe a little bit closer to the first house, which would be closest. Yeah.
That's
that
the
house.
driveway for the first house.
Yeah, but let's go from there.
Madam President, if I may, in addition to the additional landscaping, we added additional mounding. So that ground is mounded up anywhere from a foot to 4.5 feet high. And obviously, the road goes down, so it's higher, more to the rear of the site than it is to the front of the site, but we have added mounding also. And then these trees and evergreens are on the side and top of that mounding, so that all adds to the additional height and the exposure or the coverage and screening that provides.
Jamie, can you just identify for the record what time this is the program set at that this is depicting? I'm sorry?
At 10 o'clock at night.
Okay, so this is based upon the lighting plans proposed for this facility. This rendering depicts what at 10 p.m. you would see from this location along Montclair.
Yes.
Now, those were deciduous trees, so in the winter, they won't have leaves.
As David had indicated, there will be a mixture of both to provide evergreen, so you'll have year-round as well. But again, we'd be happy to, a condition with respect to the plantings that could be required on site. We're happy to work with staff and council.
Thank you.
While we have the program up, would anybody else like to see any other views from council standpoint?
I would like to see what you proposed for 19 Perry Highway
From the view from that?
from the front of the building.
Okay. Do you mind walking her out to, let's go from the Montclair corner. So if we just go up Montclair to the corner of Perry Highway and then look back on.
Mr. Wotus, I know you said that you were going to be submitting all of your slides as exhibits after your presentation. One question that was raised was, will this application be part of your submission, and will it be manipulable?
Well, we could do it. We could provide the screenshots that have basically been looked at tonight, because obviously the programming is a little difficult to submit into the record.
So you can take the different times of day, screenshot those, and give them to us. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
So which one do I do?
So I think, yeah, Councilwoman Powers is asking to see from this corner into the site.
From right here?
I just wanted to see what they propose to do to 19
From this
to
side right
improve
here?
the intersection.
Does this, I don't know if this depicts the traffic improvements. We will have a traffic engineer that'll speak to that as well.
Oh, okay.
So we will have a separate individual that can
Okay.
speak to that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can we back up just, I don't know, 20 feet over into Montclair and just look down Montclair from here at night? Yeah, kind of turn to the right and, there we go.
There.
And now turn it to midnight or so.
And that's set at 11 p.m., is that right?
11 p.m.
Okay. Here it goes, it's transitioning.
Yeah, but I'm saying.
And Jamie, again, from your experience in the field and from this proposed lighting that would be utilized for this facility if it were approved to move forward, the lighting operations would not generate, in your opinion, any adverse impacts greater than would be anticipated for this use traditionally.
No, sir.
In fact, it would be less.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I have no further questions. Mr. Wooster. Okay, Chuck, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself for the record.
My name is Chuck Worcester,
And who are you employed by? Or,
employed by David E. Worcester and Associates, the owner.
and outside of being the owner, what else are your job responsibilities?
I've been a traffic engineer for approximately 35 years. Traffic engineering consulting, I do traffic studies, traffic design, traffic control design, things like that.
And do you hold any professional licenses?
I'm a professional engineer in the state of Pennsylvania and Ohio and West Virginia, and I'm also a certified professional traffic operations engineer.
And how long have you held those licenses? At least in Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania since '89, and the PTOE took it, I think, the first year that it was created, or the first or second year. So it's been at least 15 years.
And you're involved, or you're brought in as a consultant on a multitude of different types of developments, not just gas stations, is that right?
I am.
And you've done work previously for Sheets, is that correct?
I have.
Could you give a general idea of how many facilities you've helped work on?
No, I can't. It would be an estimation, but at least 100.
And as a result of that experience, you're generally familiar with the traffic demands related to a Sheets facility.
I am.
And a Sheets facility that, as proposed, with the number of multi-pump dispensers as this one.
I am.
I'm not sure if your first slide, if you wouldn't mind, I guess, walking us through and identifying. I'd like to talk about existing conditions there, and then what's proposed.
I will. I'll run through that. We've done a traffic impact analysis. It was originally prepared and started in June, revised October 2017. The data was collected in May of 2017. So consistent with all PennDOT criteria, it is still valid. Study area was the intersection of Perry Highway, SR19 is its state designation, with Old Perry Highway and Gloria Street. We looked at Perry Highway with Montclair and Montclair Avenue with the proposed Drive B, which is the access to Montclair to the site. Site Drive A is actually opposite Gloria Street in the first intersection. We identified the existing deficiencies that are within the area. So Perry Highway, Old Perry Highway, Gloria Street does have some significant capacity deficiencies, primarily on the Old Perry Highway approach. It operates at poor levels of service in the peak street traffic hours. We studied morning and evening rush hour, and we studied the Saturday peak hour condition. Two critical issues are that there's a driveway that was referenced in an earlier presentation, that it's there at the signalized intersection. The problem is it's in the signalized intersection, but it's not signalized. That is not normal. And further, there are left turn lanes currently warranted, particularly in northbound direction, on Perry Highway at Old Perry Highway that do not exist.
In addition to the one driveway you had indicated that's in the middle of the intersection, there's also an additional curb cut as you move toward Montclair, is that right?
That's correct, and is located at the intersection. It's difficult to see.
So if you could identify what we're looking at here.
Yes, this is the existing traffic signal permit for the intersection. So north being this way, here is Old Perry Highway, here's Gloria. The existing driveway to the property that was reflected before is located right here. It's actually within the signalized intersection, not only approaches, but there's no signal heads to it. That's unusual. The other driveway is located right at the stop bar. It's right here, northbound. And that's the other driveway that's depicted for the first two parcels as access. It has access off of Montclair, and then it came around the building and actually comes right there at the stop bar. Again, somewhat unusual.
And those would not today be permitted by PennDOT, would they?
Not at all.
And the existing traffic conditions, this is how long was the last time there were improvements made, to your knowledge, to this intersection?
I don't recall. Besides, I would say some traffic signal maintenance issues. This permit is dated '02, and that was probably when it was upgraded for probably pedestrian indications, things like that. I'd have to look to see if I can do that. No, I was going to see if I can zoom in on when it was originally permitted, but I can't see that here.
Okay. Well,
But it's been a while since it's undergone any modification.
and it's for a period of time, it's required, these improvements that ultimately will be proposed have been warranted from this design, is that correct?
For many, many years, yes.
Okay.
So our proposed mitigation strategy with development is to install north and southbound left turn lanes. We're going to incorporate Site Drive A into the signalized intersection. It's at approximately the same location as it currently is, but including it in. We're going to add, concurrent with the north and southbound left turn lanes, putting in protected permitted phases and for both north and southbound. We're going to replace the existing pedestrian traffic signal heads with newer countdown timer pedestrian indications, a lot safer operation. Due to the vertical geometry of Gloria, Gloria comes up at a rather steep angle eastbound into Route 19, and it can't be seen, so we can't operate Site Drive A and Gloria together. So they'll operate on separate phases.
And what you've identified as Site Drive A,
would be the driveway to the proposed sheets.
and that currently is unsignalized, so that traffic flows into the intersection without any signalization.
That's correct. This is a general depiction of the widening of 19 to provide for the turn lane. So here would be the northbound left turn lane into Old Perry, the southbound left turn lane into the site. This is actually the traffic signal redesign that incorporates the left turn lane. Here you could see, it might be easier this way with something contrasting. Here's the proposed driveway actually included with traffic signal heads, associated crosswalks. These would be the new countdown timers. So it's the pedestrian indication with a clock next to it that actually counts down how many seconds pedestrian has to cross the street, so that they can actually see when the light is going to change for them. That is current state of the art as far as traffic signal heads. This shows the northbound and southbound turn lanes.
And the pedestrian access and the timing system would be across the entire intersection, is that right?
That's correct.
Not just at our point of ingress into the intersection?
That's correct.
Can you just talk generally about how this intersection operates currently with respect to vehicles traveling north that would like to turn left onto Old Perry Highway?
So,
or if your program depicts it better, then maybe we could go that route.
And it will. Yeah,
Okay.
in fact,
Maybe let's do that.
we'll go there. So this is the phasing plan. This just depicts how we're going to propose to phase it, showing the split phasing. This looks like a lot, but this is an emergency preemption system that McCandless requires in their traffic signals. So this is all basically for the PennDOT permitting process as far as the traffic signal permit. So this is straight from the report. This is a model depicting, this is existing 2017 PM peak hour. So this is our evening rush hour, the way that the intersection goes today. So this is a simulation using the program that we're requested to use through the Department of Transportation and through your consultants. Both of them have reviewed and approved these. So we've just taken the model and put the simulations on side by side, showing what it would look like, what it looks like today, how it operates, and what it's proposed to look like in 2024. So we've gone out to our forecast design year with the mitigation, and just ran them side by side. This will run for, now this is obviously not at real time, so this is slightly sped up. Otherwise, we'd be here a long time to watch a few minutes of video. But if you watch the operation, you'll see that you can see the queuing that takes place on Old Perry Highway right now. That's where our level of service deficiency is, primarily this approach. And in fact, you'll see that a lot of these cars might not make it out in the same phase. And here they're going to stop. And so they start, it's called a residual queue. It's taking a couple of cycles. You still will have a little bit of that condition here. It doesn't completely mitigate it, but you'll see that for the most part, most of the vehicles, when in all of the approaches here, will clear in the same phase. It does occasionally happen because we can't fix everything, but you'll see that the improvement providing the left turn lane and the southbound left turn lane, these left turn phases are primarily for a significant safety improvement for the intersection. Also some improvement operationally, but it's primarily a safety function for the intersection. Reason some of the cars turn colors depending on what they're doing. So it's if a car is turning a particular way, it's a particular color.
Where's the canopy?
It would be here. So this is showing the driveway, side driveway. This is the intersection Montclair and 19. This is the site drive A. This is Gloria, Old Perry, and 19 southbound. You can tell me when you've had enough. And I know this is pretty exciting stuff, but I know that there was a lot of discussion at previous meetings on that this is going to be horrendous, it's going to be significantly different, and really when you look at them as side-by-side comparison, there's really not. So you get some significant improvement by adding a little bit of capacity, but primarily this is a significant safety improvement because now we're having what we call protected permitted phasing. We all know what that is. When you get a green arrow, that's protected. That means no one's moving against you and in conflict with you. When the green arrow goes away and you now have a green round ball, it means it's permissive. You can go if you have a gap in traffic. And that's the way both of these will work, northbound and southbound.
And currently, how is that traffic that's moving northbound and southbound that's seeking to make a left turn navigate the site?
So what happens is, and let me drag this back here and just get it to run. So what happens is we have two lanes northbound right now. You have this lane, I'll call it the inside lane at the center line, can make a left or can go straight. And the traffic in the right lane can go straight or make a right. So if anybody wants to turn left, and obviously there's a significant left turn demand northbound that goes up into Old Perry Highway, once they stop, everybody behind them who wants to go straight has to stop with them. So in this case, what we're doing is by providing that lane, which over here turns the vehicles blue, now we can have that two lanes going northbound, put as much traffic as we can in that left turn lane, and then they get an advanced phase so that they clear and they're not interrupted by anything. And they're going without southbound traffic coming at them. So they'll get an advanced phase. And they operate. Again, it's a significant safety improvement over what's there today.
Not for Montclair.
Please. You'll have your turn to speak. Thank you.
So this is just a copy of the approval letter that we received from the township's traffic engineering consultant. This is just reiterating comments that we'd had in there before, indicating the comments addressed, comments addressed, comments addressed. They're requesting a copy of the plans when they're available as far as the intersection redesign. So that's the permitting plans, which once we go into permitting, we actually have them complete. We can provide them at any moment. But interesting here, it was here, I'm going to read this because it might be difficult. He says, as it's TA's opinion that the proposed mitigations, i.e. northbound and southbound left turn lanes on Route 19, will result in safer conditions at this intersection, and additional mitigation may not be feasible. In addition, the projected overall level of service at the intersection is D, which is considered acceptable under urban criteria. That's the rest of their letter, so it's just the last piece of it. And then this is the actual approval letter from the Department of Transportation awaiting land development approval. And I don't want any questions. Just teasing.
And Chuck, have you also have prepared a traffic impact study for this project? Is that right?
That's correct. This is essentially the results of that traffic impact study. Those simulations are directly from the traffic study that was reviewed and approved by the department and by Town of McCandless.
Okay. And so the town has that, and that's where those letters were obviously
That's correct.
generated from.
That's correct. Anything further?
Well, just the last thing I would ask is your familiarity with gas station use in general and this proposed use. The traffic volumes associated with this use would be similar to ordinary traffic volumes generated by a service station use. Is that right?
That's correct.
And again, this proposed use itself, from a proposed traffic generation standpoint, you would not anticipate any adverse impacts that would be greater than normally generated from this use. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. I have no further questions unless council does.
I have a question. So I didn't see anything with buses for school. There's a school bus stop at the end of Montclair. Do you have anything with a school bus stop?
Yeah,
A visual
they're,
like you just had?
actually, they're included because when we do our traffic counts, we count and we classify. So we'll count and classify vehicles. Probably the reason you won't see them in the PM peak hour is because you don't have school buses generally running in the PM peak hour, because our PM peak hour for rush hour is generally in the hours between 4 and 6 p.m. Schools generally out between 2 and 3 p.m. or 2 and 4 p.m., somewhere in there. But when we count, we actually identify the classification of vehicles. If there is a bus stop there, we know it, how long it dwelled. But again, traffic volumes are significantly higher during the evening rush hour and not during school let out.
I know we do have bus stops at 4 and 4:15, so.
If a bus stopped there, and when we counted originally, if it was stopped and counted, it's actually in the model.
Okay. What about pedestrians? I didn't see anything where it pauses for someone to cross the road.
The pedestrians don't have an exclusive pedestrian phase, so they'll actually walk with the vehicular traffic
Coming from whichever way they're coming across, I guess? Okay.
with their direction. That's correct.
Okay. HC. Okay, HC, if you could go ahead and identify yourself for the record.
My name is Henry Phones.
And who are you currently employed by?
Sheets Incorporated.
And what's your position with Sheets?
I'm a real estate site selector.
And just generally speaking for council, what does that entail?
Identify, analyze, and secure property for new Sheets facilities as well as potential rebuilds.
And are you generally familiar with the operations of a Sheets store as well?
Yes, I am.
How long have you been employed by Sheets?
16 years.
Could you give an approximate how many Sheets locations you've been involved in the development of?
I would say between 60 and 90 stores.
Okay. And you've been personally involved in the development of this proposed store?
That is correct.
So I'd like to talk just briefly about the existing facility that Sheets currently operates that's located across Perry Highway from this site. You're familiar with that site as well?
Yes, I am.
And that store previously operated as both a fueling station and convenience store, is that correct?
That is correct.
And did that operate on a 24/7 schedule?
Yes, it did.
And recently, the fueling operations of that facility have ceased, is that correct?
Yes, on October 8th, we stopped selling fuel at that location.
And in addition to stop selling the fuel, were there other actions that Sheets took to go ahead and discontinue that?
Yes, on the 9th and 10th, the pumps were removed from the islands and the gas inventory was removed from the tank.
Did you take some photographs depicting what the state of the site looked like as of, I believe, were those taken on October 8th?
That picture shows that was taken on October 8th with the gas operation shut down. This was taken on October 11th with the pumps removed from the islands and the gasoline removed from the underground storage tanks.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead if you want to identify the last
Yeah,
picture.
and this was on the 11th as well. This is our blanked out gasoline pricer sign.
So commencing as of the 8th, there were no longer gasoline sales available from this location.
That is correct.
And that is currently the status as of today's hearing as well.
Correct.
And the photographs that were shown up there, did you personally take those?
Yes, I did.
So currently, Sheetz is still operating this facility, is that right?
Yes, the convenience store is still open and operational.
And is that operating still on a 24/7?
Yes, it is.
To the extent that the approvals are granted for the development of the new site, will that operation cease as well?
Yes, it will.
And as part of discontinue or shutting off the sale of gasoline, has your landlord been made aware of that discontinuance?
Yes, they have.
And they have no objection to that taking place?
I'm going to object to his speaking on behalf of the landlord.
It's hearsay. We're not bound by the strict rules of evidence, so we can tell if it's not corroborated. Council should treat that as hearsay.
Well, you haven't received any objection from.
Same objection.
You haven't received any written notice from the landlord, is that right?
We have received a declaration that they would cease this.
I'm not going to object. If this is a writing, he should show us the writing. But for him to describe a paper that's not here tonight is very prejudicial to our position.
I think that's got to be upheld. Is there another?
So for the purpose of the record, though, there are no gasoline sales conducted at this facility, is that right?
That is correct.
And in addition, did you have an opportunity to determine whether or not there were any other gas stations? Are you waving to me?
Yes. Pardon me? Okay, got it. We're in a little break after this one.
Okay, no problem, no problem. And as part of your real estate site selection, and you have some familiarity with the neighborhood as well, is that right?
Yes, I do.
And there's no other gas stations that are located within 1,500 feet of the proposed location in the RC district?
That's correct. The closest gas station's approximately 4,000 feet or 3/4 of a mile north of this site at the intersection of Perry Highway and Cumberland. I believe it's a Sunoco station.
Okay. Talking about the proposed facility itself, this similarly will operate on a 24/7 schedule as proposed, is that right?
Yes, it will.
And as of today, are there any Sheetz stores that operate in the state of Pennsylvania that do not operate on a 24/7 schedule?
No. All of the 273 stores in Pennsylvania are 24/7, and likewise, all 583 stores across 6 states are all 24/7, 365.
Sheetz also operates existing facilities that either abut residential uses or are located across streets from other residential uses, is that right?
We do, yes.
So the development of this proposal within a commercial district and only abutting commercial zoning is something that traditionally Sheetz would go ahead and develop.
That is correct.
And despite there being residential not abutting the facility, that would still be in line with how Sheetz traditionally develops stores, is that right?
Yes.
You're also familiar with the proposal itself in terms of what's being proposed to be developed on the subject property, is that right?
Yes, I am.
And again, with your existing knowledge of the operations of the Sheetz facilities, in your opinion, would you agree that the proposed operations would not generate any adverse impacts greater than traditionally expected for this use?
They will not.
Okay. I don't have anything further for you, Mr. Phones. So do we want to take a break?
We'd like to call a 5-minute recess.
Okay.